Good evening, everybody. How are you? Well, thank you for coming, everybody, and a big thank you to Ocean Plaza for hosting this event and for Jonathan and Harry for putting it together. My name is Emily Markesteyn, and like Jonathan said, I'm the Executive Director for Ogeechee Riverkeeper, and I am going to talk to you about Blackwater systems. What are Blackwater rivers and swamps? You've heard of them, you've seen them, you've probably boated on them, but what makes them dark and mysterious? Well, the tea color comes from tannic acids from the plant debris in the water. They are slow moving and have a lower pH, which means they're more acidic. They have a characteristic white sandy bottom and are usually enveloped by a forested floodplain. Blackwater ecosystems are extremely important. They're an important habitat for a host of wildlife, both terrestrial and aquatic. These ecosystems function as natural filters for pollution from runoff, and the vast floodplain of a Blackwater river allows for overflow in times of excess rain, which we aren't really having right now, but if we were, these areas would capture that rain and keep it away from your homes. And overall, these areas are unique and special to many coastal southerners like yourselves. Now, the Ogeechee and Kenichi rivers, the Ogeechee River actually begins as a small spring-fed creek in Greene County, just south of Athens, Georgia. It is 240 miles long, and the smaller stream that you see is actually the Kenichi River, which is the Ogeechee's major tributary. The Ogeechee and the Kenichi are unique in that they are completely within the state of Georgia. We don't have to share them with anyone else. The entire river basin drains over 5,000 square miles of land and flows through 22 counties and ultimately ends up in the Ossabaw Sound and coastal marshes just south of Savannah. And the river basin is home to many cypress forests. There is a variety of cypress trees, actually, two in this area called the bald cypress and the pond cypress. They are both deciduous conifers, and they're very tolerant to the flooding due to their root outgrowth. Some people call them knees or knobs, and they're swollen tree trunks. Now, cypress forests are very important. In Georgia, we rank third in the nation for acreage of cypress forests. We are second in the nation for amphibian diversity in these forests. We're third for fish diversity, but also, unfortunately, we are number 5 in the nation for species already lost to extinction. Cypress trees can live up to 1,500 years and grow up to 150 feet tall. They are habitat to rare or endangered wildlife, and like I said, they naturally remove pollutants from runoff, and they reduce the flooding, and they also are important in the groundwater recharge, timber harvesting. Now, development is just what you might think it is. In 2006, the Coastal Georgia Regional Development Center, along with Georgia Tech, found that the population in a 10-county area along our coast, the population jumped up 62% between 1970 and 2000. And they expect it to increase by another 51% by the year 2030. Explosive growth was seen and predicted in Long, Effingham, and Bryan counties. Now, trends have slowed, obviously, due to the economic recession, but there is no doubt that the coast is the place to be. So we don't expect it to slow down much. And it should also be noted that large landholders such as International Paper, Rayonier, and Plum Creek have thousands of acres available now, they're actually selling their land for money, and this may cause a problem because up until now it was undisturbed. And I wrote pine plantations down because there's a push, it's almost a catch-22, there's a push for alternative fuels. You might have heard of biomass, woody biomass, and the best thing to use are fast-growing pine trees. So in an effort to find alternative fuels, some people have started cutting down these hardwood forests to build pine plantations. Cypress mulch, I'm not going to ask if any of you have cypress mulch, but is actually another cause for the decline in the forest. Southern Environmental Law Center performed a study in 2011, and that's actually true for mature cypress trees because they have the hardwood, which is wood durability and rot resistant, but the mulch itself is actually made from younger trees, so it doesn't hold those unique properties that some companies claim. So according to Southern Environmental Law Center's report, there are action steps that should be taken if the forests are to remain viable. They're obviously monitoring and research, consumer awareness and market practices, management practices, and obviously regulation and enforcement. And that's actually a picture of me with a landowner next to a cypress tree, and I don't know if you can see the scratches on the tree. We think it was a black bear. I thought that was pretty neat. Now everyone knows the value and beauty of our coastal marshes and wetlands. And this is a picture of the Ogeechee River Basin and its expanse along the coast. The basin itself actually runs from Liberty Street in downtown Savannah south all the way just before Darien. And it's flanked by the Savannah River Basin and the Altamaha River Basin. So we actually have a fair amount of Georgia coast to protect here. Does anyone know what the biggest threat to, what the biggest pollutant is? Does the picture give you a hint? It's actually sediment. Sediment is the biggest polluter of our rivers and streams, and that's from runoff. And you'll see here, rainwater enters storm drains on the sides of the roads and goes directly to a river or ocean. It does not take a detour through a treatment facility like water does from our sink or toilet. So anything can make it into our public waters, including trash, litter, and pesticides. Water withdrawal is also a concern for the Ogeechee River Basin. And here's some statistics that I pulled off of the Georgia Environmental Protection website. They actually just updated the farm water permits in January. And if you'll see, there's groundwater and surface water, and this is a cumulative total for all of the permits for the Ogeechee River Basin. And you can see that that's over 400,000 gallons per minute, and that's every minute of every day, 365 days a year. And surface water for farms is actually higher, it's almost 1 million. But that's the max permit allowance for all the permit holders of the farms in the Ogeechee River Basin. Now, for non-farm permits, we've got 3 as of last year for surface water, but that's still pushing 13 million gallons a day. And for groundwater, that's a little more. We've got 49 permits pulling water from the Ogeechee River Basin, and that's upwards of 71 million gallons per day. So on the other end, you've got water withdrawal, but you also have people discharging back into the river. And right now we have 57 permitted discharge pipes into the Ogeechee River. And you'll see on the left-hand side picture, that's actually the Kenichi River. And that was taken a while ago. Three sisters who lived in Claxton, Evans County, noticed their river looking like this, and it was due to Claxton poultry. So they actually filed a successful lawsuit against Claxton Poultry and cleaned up the Kenichi River. And then the right-hand picture is King America Finishing's discharge pipe. So you'll see it going right into the river, bubbling up who knows what. Land application of sewage sludge and effluent is also harmful to groundwater, and unfortunately it's still an acceptable practice. Right now we're monitoring sludge fields in Jefferson County, which is near Louisville, and that material actually comes from Augusta. So Augusta sends their sludge to Jefferson County to be applied to farmland. Another important issue for a lot of Georgia's rivers, especially the Ogeechee River, is mercury. The Ogeechee River is on the state of Georgia's 303D list for impaired rivers due to its high mercury levels. Mercury is a neurotoxin that interferes with the brain and the nervous system. And the most common way for mercury to enter the system is through coal-fired power plants. And when it hits the river, it converts into methyl mercury, which is, we are very vulnerable to that form of mercury. And it enters the food chain low, and then as the larger fish eat the smaller fish, it accumulates because mercury will never go away. And then we end up consuming those large fish. And on EPD's website, you can go and look at the 303D list for impaired rivers for the entire state of Georgia. It was updated in January, and I just quickly took a look before I came. There are 39 coastal streams right near us here, including the Wilmington River, the Vernon, Lazaretto Creek. All of these are on this impaired list for mercury. EPD has come up with a fish consumption guideline. It's a healthy level of fish to eat, and they say for the Ogeechee rivers that for largemouth bass, if you want to eat a largemouth bass, you should only eat 1 meal per month of that, and 1 meal per week of a catfish or a redbreast. So it's pretty low. Now obviously wildlife is not immune to mercury either, and this slide just shows several studies of mercury on wildlife, including the mummy chog and salmon. It disrupts their reproductive systems, their intestinal and renal functions, and increases their mortality rates. And here is a slide that talks about a study on the great egret chicks and how mercury levels in their food affected their activity, their motivation to hunt, and their tendency to seek shade. Now, like I had mentioned before, the mercury effects on people, neurological disorders, learning disabilities, lower IQs. It's obviously similar to the wildlife. According to the EPA, which is the United States Environmental Protection Agency, 1 in 6 babies are born each year having been exposed to excess mercury while in the mother's womb. And that's very disturbing. This can result in brain damage and developmental disorders. This is just a diagram of how mercury enters the water and then into the food chain. Now what's disturbing to me, and probably will be to you, is to learn that 99% of the mercury found in the Ogeechee River comes from air pollution, but the Ogeechee River Basin doesn't have any coal-fired power plants in our basin. So it's actually all coming from somewhere else, somewhere outside of our area, mostly from Alabama, actually. Yeah, it carries over. And already, this slide was actually made several years ago, but at that time, the rivers already had nearly 2 times the limit of allowable mercury that's allowed in the air. They found it in the rivers. So just a recap of mercury. Developing babies and young children are the most vulnerable to mercury pollution. You should limit your fish consumption. And Georgia's Blackwater rivers, such as the Ogeechee and Kenichi, are highly susceptible to methylmercury pollution because of their unique chemistry. And more coal-fired power plants will add more mercury to our waters, than to our fish, than to ourselves. So action steps that can be taken is obviously no new coal-fired power plants being built. We should also clean up the coal ash or the excess coal that after it's been burnt from the plant areas. We need to convert plants to alternative sources if we can and reduce energy usage so we won't be dependent on these plants for our electricity. And I also wanted to let you know that the way you can test for mercury in your body is through a hair sample. The University of Georgia will test for free. I don't have any kits here tonight, but if you're interested, I can take your information and we can get you tested, get your hair sent off. But even though mercury doesn't go away, you can get rid of it from your body by obviously reducing your intake. And anecdotally, Diana Wedenkamp, who is our riverkeeper for Ogeechee, my co-worker, when she first started with the Riverkeeper organization in 2000, her mercury limit was 200 times the amount that she should have had naturally in her body, and that's because she ate fish out of the Kenichi River almost every day. She has since obviously gotten that lowered, but it was a real eye-opener for her, and as it should be to you too.
Which is sad because fish is such a healthy item.
Yes, yes. You know, doctors and diets are saying fish, you know, is good for you. It's much better than red meat. But, you know, we are making strides to correct the problem. It has been a hard battle. We've had a few victories against coal. We are part of the Georgians for Smart Energy Coalition. It's a group of other environmental and health organizations such as the Sierra Club. And back in 2011, we were happy to know that the Longleaf Power Station in Early County has come to an end. That was actually the longest running fight against a new plant being built in the nation. And just recently, within the past couple of weeks, we heard that plant Ben Hill in Ben Hill County has also been canceled. And I want you to know also that coal-fired power plants are becoming a thing of the past, not just because of health concerns, but the economics as well. Coal plants are expensive to build and even more expensive to maintain. And right now it's actually cheaper to use natural gas because they are at a historical low price. And you may have heard that Georgia Power is turning away from coal generation. And we want to continue pushing them to do that. So who are riverkeepers? There are actually 6 riverkeepers in Georgia, the Ogeechee, the Savannah, the Altamaha, the Satilla, the Flint, and then the Upper Chattahoochee. And that's me in the upper left with Diana Wedenkamp, our riverkeeper, and Sally Bethay, who is the Upper Chattahoochee riverkeeper. She has been a pioneer in this field and a really good asset for us. That's Gordon Rogers in the, on the bottom there. Deborah Shepard is the executive director for the Altamaha Riverkeeper. And Tanya Bonitatabus is the Savannah Riverkeeper, and she's in the far right picture, giving some people an earful, it looks like. But the picture down at the bottom is actually a national gathering of riverkeepers. We are all members of a national organization called Waterkeeper Alliance, and we're held to quality standards to use the brand Keeper. So across the nation there are bay keepers, coast keepers, river keepers, water keepers, over 190 actually throughout the world. Our history specifically, Ogeechee Riverkeeper was formed from a merger between two other smaller groups, Friends of the Ogeechee and the Kenichi Riverkeeper. And our mission is to protect, preserve, and improve the water quality of the Ogeechee River Basin. Our membership comes from people all over the United States, but more specifically in the state of Georgia and the Savannah area. We have two program areas that we're proud of, the Hometown Waters Education and the Watershed Watch program. Education is just what it sounds like. We go into classrooms and teach children and teachers about stream monitoring, non-point source pollution, groundwater, surface water conservation methods, volunteers for stream monitoring, and then community and stream cleanups. And we also obviously do civic presentations such as this in the public. Now the Watershed Watch is where we patrol the area for pollution and report it to the appropriate authorities, which would be the state of Georgia. And that's Diana Wedenkamp, our riverkeeper, taking samples of the King America finishing discharge pipe. So what can you do? Obviously get involved. Come to forums such as this. Come to the forum next Tuesday night at Savannah State. Learn about what's going on in your neighborhood, on your river. Be an advocate. Keep your eyes and ears open. Report suspicious activity to either us, the Riverkeeper, or the state of Georgia, EPD, Georgia's Environmental Protection Division. You can volunteer to do stream monitoring in your local area. You can perform community cleanups, stream cleanups, and obviously donate generously because we are a nonprofit and we rely on our members to help us help you, help the water. Oh, and I also wanted to tell you about some other upcoming events. Obviously we'll be in Forsyth Park on Saturday for Earth Day. That's put on by the city of Savannah. And the Fishkill Forum on Tuesday. We also have a special event up in Midville, Georgia at Coleman Lake Restaurant. It's the second annual River Aid concert. We've got 3 local bands playing for a good cause. It's going to be a good time. And then we also will probably do a paddle trip open to the public in May and our annual membership meeting in June.